Joe from As the Joe Flies.
And I'm Leslie from Trips with Tykes.
And welcome back to Disney Deciphered. So, on today's episode, we are going to talk all about character meet and greets, where you can meet the characters in the parks, why you might want to do that. But before that, we want to, of course, shout out new Patreon subscribers and talk a little bit about Patreon. So, Leslie, who do we have today?
All right, so today we're thanking new Patreon supporter Jeffrey C. If you want to support the podcast, get our unfiltered episodes, real-time trip reports, access to our Facebook group, you can go to patreon.com/Disney Deciphered. Thanks so much to everybody who has supported, past and present.
Definitely. All right, so we are going to talk about character meet and greets and meeting the characters. Before we do that, I think it's good to talk about some background, some Disney lingo, Disney terminology. I think it helps to set a benchmark for what you're expecting out of various character meet and greets. So, Leslie, let's start with the different types of characters that you can meet at Disney World, Disneyland, actually all the Disney parks. I think the terminology is the same. So, what are the two breakdowns of what the two character types are that you can meet?
So I'm not sure this is Disney terminology, but you can meet characters that are face characters, which you actually see like the real human being, like an actor. And then you can also meet characters that are inside costumes. So like Mickey Mouse. You wrote down in the notes, Joe, fur versus face characters. I'm pretty sure Disney is not using fur to refer to its characters. Gets a little weird.
It does get a little weird. I didn't know what the term is, but yeah, basically an actor, you actually see the actor, or they're in a costume like a mascot that you might see at a sporting event. Now, I think it's a pretty big difference. The face characters, those are the ones that you are going to expect to actually talk to you, whereas the characters in costume, they're going to be funny in their own way.
Yes, usually they are pantomiming, although there have been instances of characters that do talk, like the fur characters that talk. The example I'm thinking of, there was a talking Mickey for a while, and then currently at Disneyland, there's a talking Doug. But like usually that's a recording in some way, shape, or form. It's not like the human being is speaking to you. So, but you might get a little talking, just depending upon where the technology goes.
I forgot about the talking Doug. I know some people found talking Mickey kind of creepy because his mouth's not moving, but Doug, since it's coming ostensibly from his collar or whatever, is it a little bit less creepy? Or it wasn't a ton of people, but I know people thought Mickey was creepy. Do people feel okay about Doug?
I think people are okay about Doug. I actually didn't see it myself, but I saw plenty of videos this week. But it feels like it's in keeping with the character from the movie, so less weird. And then also, of course, like a lot of the characters in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge will talk too. Like the stormtroopers will talk, right? So that seems less weird because you don't see stormtrooper mouths moving in the movies, so it works.
Great point. I think this is a good place to continue talking about like what can you expect out of your interactions with the characters. I think for starters, I will say that they are very good, whether they're talking to you or not talking to you. I feel like characters at Disney World, and yes, characters exist everywhere, and really anyone, we only need to look to this year's College Bowl season and Pop-Tart to know that there are amazing people in these costumes. But at Disney, I think it's a little bit more special. Of course, we're biased. We are Disney Deciphered after all. But what kind of interactions have you experienced or do you typically expect? Let's start with the costume characters, and then we can talk a little bit about the face characters as well.
Sure. So the most common thing, especially with young kids, you're going to get hugs from these characters. You're going to get like sort of some funny pantomiming back and forth. And, often like if your child or something is wearing the character's face on their shirt and, the character will notice and like interact and point and things like that. You also get signing autographs from some, but not every character. It depends on sort of the circumstances and the equipment. And of course, you get to take photos depending upon the setup.
You take photos no matter what, but whether there are PhotoPass photographers or not, we'll get to that a little bit later. I think for the face characters, this can be very varied. Definitely, you're going to get a lot of just normal interactions. I feel like they do a great job. The princesses especially do a great job. They talk in the same tone and manner of voice, same style. For example, Rapunzel, she's very kind of innocent and doesn't understand how the world works, like that comes through in the terminology is the actor who's playing Rapunzel is considered the friend of Rapunzel. And so the friends of Rapunzel, they do a great job. Friends of Cinderella are very more, I don't know, Cinderella. I can't, I don't know how to describe the different princesses in nuance. You're going to have to ask the 6-year-old about that, or maybe you know better, Leslie.
Yeah, yeah, but the bottom line is, I mean, they're improving. That's what these characters are doing. These are very talented actors who are essentially doing improv. Like they're taking the inputs from the people that they're meeting, and they certainly have like jokes that they're repeating or things that they're repeating, and but they have to like know their movies. They have to know the stories of their characters and the characters that they interact with in their movies, and then they apply it to the circumstance of the family that they're meeting. And I've seen some really impressive stuff. Like, I mean, everybody I think has seen like the Gaston is kind of the classic, who really can ham it up and take situations and make them very funny, like off the cuff.
Just don't expect everybody to be nice to you. I don't know how else to say this. You brought up the stormtroopers, right? The stormtroopers are generally, I wouldn't say mean, but they're doing their jobs. They're enforcing order in the galaxy, or at least that's what they think they're doing. But especially, even on Rise of the Resistance, which that's not technically a character meet and greet, but the First Order troops, they're going to be a little bit rude to you. And then, of course, if you meet Maleficent, Cinderella's wicked stepsisters, characters like that, they're not going to be nice to you. That's part of the gag. I think they're pretty good about dialing back or up their sass and rudeness depending on whether you're like a 3-year-old child or a 40-year-old man or woman. But I do think, I mean, that's the fun for adults, right? When you're talking to the villains that can talk back to you.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think sometimes Disney has pushed the boundaries of this a little bit too much. Like when Galaxy's Edge first opened, the First Order folks in Rise of the Resistance were really mean. And I think it actually scared some people, and they've definitely dialed it back. So just be aware. Introverts especially, be aware, because it might be awkward. It might be awkward.
So yeah, that's pretty much what you can expect from your interactions. But in general, they're always quite a bit of fun. And I will say that for the most part, I rarely feel like a character is rushing me to the next thing. They seem to take their time. And this is part of why wait times for characters are so long, because they do such a great job of providing at least one meaningful interaction with everybody who wants it. Right. So at this point, I don't talk to the characters or whatever. Oh, Kylo Ren was really rude. Funny. My mom talking to Kylo Ren, just it was classic. She had no idea what he was saying, and he was like ordering her around and telling her to like reveal the truth and to stop lying, and she had no idea. It was hilarious. But anyway, sorry, I got distracted there for a second. But yeah, they're gonna have a meaningful interaction with you, and you can expect that for the most part. I mean, every once in a while it'll be quick, and sometimes realistically, sometimes like my kids even, they don't necessarily vibe with the character, whether it's a face character or a character in costume. And, those interactions will be shorter, but it's going to be a minute, maybe even 2 minutes, depending on the situation. So that's kind of what your expectation should be for how you get to talk to them. Oh, and then the last thing to mention with character interactions is that if you have an autograph book and you want them, the majority of characters will give you autographs. There are some exceptions. Enchanted Tales with Belle, she has to meet like 20 people at once. That's not going to happen. That's a special character meet and greet. That's also part attraction. And Olaf, very famously, will not sign your autograph book because I forget the in-universe excuse that they use, but it's because he is in a white costume and they cannot use black Sharpies anywhere near him. So they just use stickers. But let's talk about the different places where you can meet characters. They're all over the place, Leslie. So let's break some of these down.
Sure. So my favorite way actually to meet characters is by booking a character meal. So there's some that are in park. There are many more that are in the hotels. So you don't necessarily have to do this on a park day where you're paying for theme park tickets. And What's great about them is that the characters come to your table and you get these interactions and you can take individual photos. You're not standing in line, standing in the heat. And that's definitely something that we try to do pretty much every Disney trip as a family, at least get one character meal. And you can see some sort of more obscure characters depending upon the type of meal that you book that maybe you wouldn't even get to see in the parks. Downside of character meals, of course, they're very expensive and you have to book them very much in advance. Dining opens 60 days in advance at Walt Disney World, and some of these character meals are highly, highly competitive.
Especially stuff like Chef Mickey's, even though the food isn't necessarily the best there. Then there are also character meet and greets that are listed as attractions. And to differentiate these a little bit, there are Genie Plus character meet and greets. So those are going to show up in your tip board, and you can do Genie Plus Lightning Lane reservations for them like you do any other Genie Plus reservation. But there are also set meet and greets, and I broke this down into like two separate types. What I'm calling continuous character meet and greets and timed meet and greets. It gets a little tricky, but let me put it this way. Anna and Elsa, if you go to visit them at Epcot, they are there. They do not have Genie Plus, by the way. Important. We're going to talk about them separately just because that I know that's an important meet and greet for a lot of people. They do not have Genie Plus reservations, but when you're lining up for Anna and Elsa, you're pretty much like the line's going to keep moving and you're just going to keep seeing them. And Anna and Elsa, in air quotes, are going to be there. There may be, not to kill the magic a little bit, but there may be a few Anna and Elsa's around. So that's moving continuously. Now, other examples of this are like at Pete's Silly Sideshow Circus in the Magic Kingdom. I think Goofy, Daisy, Donald, Minnie, they meet there, and that is constantly happening. Every once in a while, they'll take like a quick break, but they come right back out after they powder their nose or whatever. The trickier ones are there are meet and greets which are listed on My Disney Experience, but it's only certain times during the day. And you'll range from Mirabelle, who essentially meets like every hour at Magic Kingdom. She comes out every hour, sometimes twice an hour. And there are actual times on the app when she's going to come out. It ranges from her to someone like Mulan, who only comes out 4 times a day and only during certain times. So you got to differentiate between those two types of character meet and greets that don't have Genie Plus, just because if you expect Mulan to be there all day, she's not going to be, and you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, there are some things you can kind of like treat like a standby queue that you just get in it when you want to do it. And there's some things that you have to treat like an appointment or like a showtime, and you come up to the showtime. And it is really a spectrum. It's not really like there's one kind and the other kind. It's like everything in between as well. So it does require a little bit of a learning curve, and it's not entirely clear. And then these things do change on the app, right? You can't necessarily plan for them very, very far in advance. Like you need to check the app and the map and look at the times on the day that you're in the park.
If characters are super important to you, by the way, Leslie, I should have let you do that one. You said it so much more succinctly. But if characters are really important to you, a shout out to Kenny the Pirate. He has a character locator. It's called characterlocator.com. Leslie, finally for this episode, I paid for it for the year just to do some market research and whatnot. All the characters are listed, and by day, they will list all the characters that they expect to be out for that day. And it's really useful because it says which ones have PhotoPass photographers, which ones you can do Lightning Lane with, what times it's going to be, whether they sign autographs or not even. And so the website is a little bit wonky. It's not necessarily, I would say, the most modern website. I'm sure there's an app as well. Did not have a chance to check out the app yet, but it was $10.95 for a year. So I figured might as well check it out and try it out. And, I was playing around with it for about 45 minutes this morning, and yeah, found a lot of interesting things. For example, I've seen Anastasia and Drizella. Is that the stepsisters' names? Did I get them?
I think that's right. I know Drizella's right. I don't know about the first one.
Sure.
So.
We're just gonna go with it.
We're going with
anyway,
it.
I've seen them before out and about, but using the character locator, they actually have times that they're expected to come out. So, if there are certain characters that you really want to see or your kids really want to see, characterlocator.com is Kenny the Pirate's character locator. So that was pretty useful. Now, there are also random character meet and greets, Leslie, before offline, we were talking about how, we see them at the hotels a lot.
Yeah, you will sometimes just sort of randomly run into a character hanging out in the hotel lobby, and there's no times listed in an app, and there's really no like necessarily method to the madness, at least that I've been able to figure out because I'm not there often enough. Maybe somebody who's there every day has figured out patterns, but you can definitely in some of the hotel lobbies like get a character photo or hangout time a little bit. And sometimes, but not as often as at Disneyland, you'll see random characters kind of roaming the parks. At Walt Disney World, they tend to be in more set locations, whereas at Disneyland, they're kind of famous for just like strolling around Fantasyland. Not as much at Walt Disney World, but it does happen. So, you might be able to catch a character that way. And occasionally those can be really magical moments. Like, I don't know if you've seen like a video sometimes of like a character who really like takes to a young child and like takes their hand and walks around the park. If you get picked for that, really magical, but like no guarantee that you will.
I've definitely had a picture with Cruella de Vil. I'm trying to remember if she just like tapped me on the shoulder and I turned around or something like that. That was during a Halloween party, but still. And like every once in a while, someone will get a random tap on their back and then they'll turn around and like Pluto will be there. Like I just saw Pluto at Saratoga Springs just wandering around. And so that was cool. Leslie, you will love this. During the current Country Bear Jamboree refurbishment, the Country Bears, they are out and about like every day. So if you're listening to this before Country Bear Jamboree has come back online, they're all over the place. So if you miss your Country Bears, you can find them wandering around Frontierland most of the time.
Awesome. It's almost enough to make me want to schedule a trip right now, Joe. All right.
Yeah.
Final thing we should talk about. There are also character performances. And I would kind of lump into this parades as well. So you will not necessarily get a full meet and greet experience, but you will get some character interactions. And like an example for it is the Green Army Men who march through Toy Story Land and Hollywood Studios. And then of course, like there's so many characters in the parades themselves. And sometimes, like especially if they're the ones walking on the street, like they'll come up and like wave at your child or something like that, or have like kind of a quick little interaction as part of that performance. So this may be enough depending upon what your kids want. This may scratch the itch to have seen a character, even if you can't get like the full scale meet and greet and get a hug and get a photo and get an autograph.
And that's where sometimes you'll see characters that you can't see elsewhere, like Wendy, Peter and Wendy. She's only in the parade. So that's where you're going to see things like that. As we've already mentioned, you will sometimes see character performances, like Kylo Ren will come out in Galaxy's Edge and he does a little show in front of his shuttle. The Green Army Men, very cool, walking around, marching and drumming in Toy Story Land. That happens a lot. These are all character performances where I guess I don't think this would normally happen, but if they like reach out to you to give them a high five, you can give them a high five or whatever. But typically these are do not touch them type interactions. They're there performing and you're not there to get in the way. You're just there to enjoy watching them. Just be aware of that. That's not the time to ask for an autograph. All right, so let's talk really quickly about how to meet the characters. Leslie, you already shared that if you're going to do a character meal, you can make your dining reservations 60 days in advance. For Genie Plus, you're just going to make Genie Plus reservations like you do for any attraction. Would recommend that if it's very important for you to meet the princesses at Magic Kingdom, do those. They don't have to be the first thing that you do, but do them earlier rather than later because they do back up pretty quickly, especially Ariel because it's only a single princess where a lot of the other princess meet and greets are 2 at a time. I did mention Enchanted Tales with Belle, which is half attraction, half princess meet. We've talked about that ad nauseum on this podcast, so you can check that out. Time meet and greets, Leslie. How soon do you think people should be lining up and what do people need to know about these timed greets?
So line up about 15-20 minutes in advance because at some point they do cut the line off. So if there's too many people in line, even if the character is scheduled to be there for 15 or 20 more minutes, like they can't get through that number of people. So they will cut the line. So you can't just like wait until you see a character at one of these time meet and greets and hop in line necessarily. So if there's somebody you really want to see, get there early. And, if you're early enough, you may have a shorter wait anyway. So there could be strategery to that. The times again should be in the app. For Anna and Elsa, I know you just did this recently on your VIP tour, but for the regular folks, what's the best method to see Anna and Elsa?
I feel like you want to rope drop this. It's a little tricky because rope drop for Anna and Elsa is not rope drop for Epcot. It used to be 10 a.m. These days it's been closer to 9:15 a.m. But if you get there early, like normally people go on Frozen first and then because the lines will build up. If you have a lightning lane for Frozen or something like that, go wait for Anna and Elsa first. I did have a client who ended up the posted wait time was 30 minutes. She said she waited like 90 minutes. That is pretty brutal. I mean, something must have gone wrong that day. In general, though, the posted wait times are pretty good. And I will say that due to the Disney magic, it is fairly efficient as a character meet and greet, as long as I guess none of the Annas and Elsas, again, spoiler alert, are sick or something like that on a given day and called in sick or whatever. And so normally I don't see it longer than 45 minutes to an hour. It is still pretty long. But if you get there early, probably 15, 20 minutes is all you're going to have to worry about.
Right. And so we also mentioned the random character meet and greets. These are really just something you can't plan for. You got to get lucky. And I mean, I guess there are ways you can improve your chances. Like, for example, I tend to find the characters in the hotel lobbies like maybe a little more often, like in the afternoon when you're heading back for a midday break, something like that. But you're not going to see them at 11 o'clock at night, of course. But so, yeah, you can improve your chances, but those are just Disney magical moments. And then finally, if you want to see those character performances, parades, things like that, those are when you should be using the My Disney Experience app. And I think a lot of people like don't use the app to its full capabilities. Like make sure you're clicking all the drop down menus, like you're toggling the thing at the top because the default is that it's going to show you wait times for rides, but you need to toggle over to things like shows or entertainment, I think is the tab that you use. So make sure you're toggling all those options and learning it beforehand if you're a first timer so that you can get all of the times for all the things you need because they're a lot. They're a lot.
Yeah, and on any given day, characters that are scheduled to be on that day, this is going to be more accurate than Kenny the Pirate. Typically, at least the ones that are officially announced, they'll be there with their times. One more quick thing on the characters with times. The ones that are like Mirabelle, I'm looking at Mirabelle's times right now. Today it's 9, 9:45, 10:30, 11:15, 12. You know, if it's every 45 minutes, generally she's going to meet for like 20 to 25, maybe even 30 minutes, depending on how long they let the line get. And then it's going to be a 15-minute break, and then she's going to start again. If that's the situation and you kind of get cut off before you get to meet her, I would say stay and wait in that line. Whereas the other ones, like I'm looking at Snow White, she's meeting at 8:20, 9:20, 10:20, 11:20, 1:20. More typically, they'll be like, the line's going to end here. There's no reason for you to wait. And there's really kind of no reason for you to still wait in that line because it's going to be an extra like half hour or something. You can go and then come back 10 to 15 minutes before the next scheduled one. So again, you have to be a little bit flexible and read what the scheduled times are and kind of base your strategy on that.
All right, one other thing we should mention, Joe, there are opportunities to have special character meet and greets. And these are usually at like the hard ticketed special events, the Halloween parties, the after hours kind of things. So this is something that if you're really character obsessed or there's somebody really obscure that you want to meet, then you're going to need to pay more or differently at least to get access to them. I mean, the one that I'm always thinking about, Jack Skellington, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and I have met them and you have met them too, right? At a
That's
Halloween
right.
party. And so some of these characters you can only see at these special events. There are other characters that maybe you could get in a regular way, like Aladdin, for example, is also available at 1900 Park Fair right now, but maybe he's also available at some of these special events. So yeah, you've got to like be obscure and do your research but you probably already have if you really care about character meet and greets.
I got to see Aladdin and Jasmine together at the Halloween party. So, that was very special. But yeah, that's a great way to see those rare characters. I think Seven Dwarfs come out sometimes. Of course, you can see them at Artist Point at Wilderness Lodge, but yeah, sometimes they come out. Things like that can be a lot of fun. Oh, the other thing to note is during the parties and at some of the character meals, you will find characters in different costumes. So Mickey has a different costume at Tusker House, Topolino's, Chef Mickey's, at Town Square, which is not a meal. So if you meet Mickey on Red Carpet Dreams or whatever that's called at Hollywood Studios, that's Sorcerer Mickey. There's like a million different Mickeys you can meet, for example. So that's another thing to bear in mind. I guess if you're trying to complete the different Mickey costume set or something. I don't know what character people like to do, as our kids are quickly growing out of that phase. Photos is probably the most important thing you want to know about for characters. The majority of the character meet and greets that are found in the app are going to have PhotoPass photographers with them. Not all of them, but the majority of them are going to have that. Always have your phone ready, of course, as well. I will say a lot of the character meals do not have PhotoPass photographers. They don't have PhotoPass photographers walking around taking pictures as the characters are wandering and greeting you at your dining table. If there's a character that you meet as you're coming in, there's usually a PhotoPass photographer there, but not during like the actual meal itself. It's just too many moving parts, literally, and they would get in the way and probably cause a lot of accidents. Now, Leslie, I don't think you've experienced this yet, but we do have to talk about how the new light boxes are terrible.
Yeah, so I'm so glad I haven't experienced these, but like, I mean, I get the sort of impression they're like, going into the photo booth and you have to like position yourself right. And yeah, but they've replaced human beings with these machines. So where there used to be PhotoPass photographers in some locations, there are these light boxes. So what's your experience been?
Yeah, it's just really random. They just take pictures like every 6 or 7 seconds, and they take a lot, but it's a bit of a crapshoot whether the angle is good or not. And so I do not love them. I miss having the PhotoPass photographers. A lot of the big meet and greets, Mickey, the princesses in Fantasyland, Anna and Elsa, they all use these light boxes. If you see a light box, I would highly, highly, highly suggest give your camera to one of the cast members who are there and please ask them to take photos or take photos yourself and then give your camera to the cast member and ask them to take that group photo for you. The nice thing, I guess, with the light boxes is you're not getting in anyone's way. Like you're not getting in a physical human's way when you're taking the pictures. So you can get better angles and hopefully get pictures better that way. But I really, I do not submit to our AI overlords when it comes to these light boxes. No bueno, not good at all. Now, Leslie, I know that you have a family that is built for show business. Can you give us a few tips about staging your kids in a way that the pictures will come out better, regardless of whether it's a human or a light box taking the picture?
I'm only a marginally better photographer than you, Joe. So that's really, I guess, the qualifications that I have.
But your kids know where to stand to angle themselves to the audience because they've been in these shows, and mine do not. They're always putting their back to the photo.
I mean, I guess look at the camera, kids. And I mean, I guess we sort of have the family pose now where like my husband and I are in the back, like my daughter who's taller than I am now is like angled so that she's not blocking me. And then like my son who's still short is in the front. So find your family angle and like have that be like the default position just to get a quick group shot. You'll probably see, I should probably look back at like my family photos from Japan. Like we're probably all in the same place pretty much every time. So, do that, but like make sure the kids are looking at the camera and, like with younger kids, that's really hard. I mean, I think part of it is, Joe, your kids are just younger. Like they'll get better.
My 11-year-old should know better, and you're missing the chance to compliment your kids. So I'll just compliment them. Because your kids have been on stage shows, they know that when you're on stage, you talk at an angle to the character you're talking to. You're like diagonal to them so that you're still facing the audience. I'm not only talking about when you're posing. Posing, you can move people around. But like we said, you're going to have a minute or 2-minute interaction with the character. When I take pictures of my kids interacting with the characters, I'm just taking pictures of their backs. And I get the character's face, and the character is smiling but I don't get the look. Most of the time, I don't get the look of joy and wonder that the kids are having when these characters are sharing their most intimate secrets with them. I guarantee you, I know for a fact that your kids would know how to stand in a way that both their faces and the character faces could be taken while they're having these conversations.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess too, as the photographer, I'm moving my feet a lot. So like I'm getting myself in that angle if they're not, I mean, you can't always because there are places where you can't go at some of these character meet and greets, but like, don't be afraid. You don't have to stand straight in front, like move to the sides. And I think I'm often letting the cast member, like the PhotoPass photographer or the cast member who has like a phone from our family stand straight in front. And I'm like on the side taking pictures. So like maybe I'm forcing the stage angle a little bit more.
Exactly. All right, so when you're done, you're going to tap your magic band or your card or whatever to either the PhotoPass photographer will be holding a little machine, or if it's light boxes, there'll be like a screen and a place, almost like getting your pictures at Buzz Lightyear or whatever. So you're going to tap your band or card on a Mickey head to get the pictures attached to your account. Of course, if you buy Memory Maker, you can check back episode 297 where we talked about Memory Maker. You'll get all your photos. If not, you can buy them a la carte on the Disney website when you're logged in to My Disney Experience. Just really quickly, our kids are growing out of it, but do you want to talk a little bit about why you find interacting with characters just a nice part of the Disney experience?
Yeah, I mean, they really are some of the more magical moments that I remember when my kids were younger. And like you say, they're growing out of it. But even still, you get some fun laughs with like teenagers and stuff like that. But some of the most memorable moments I've had at Disney have been meeting and greeting characters, and not just World, but like one from World that I'll share. Like when my daughter met Anna for the first time in Norway, and my daughter is a redhead. The first thing the cast member did was take one of her red pigtails and hold it up to my daughter's head, and it was the exact same color. Like that was super super special. Like that made my daughter feel like, oh, this is my character. And they had such great interactions, great hugs, really really special moment. I also, this is not World specific, but when we were at Disney Aulani, we actually had Goofy come over to our table right when we told my daughter that she was going to be a big sister. And so she got to tell Goofy, there's a baby in my mom's belly. And like to see like how Goofy then interacted with her, gosh, like core memory, Joe.
Shout out to the costume makers, because obviously Goofy can't change his expression, but it's like the costume plus the way the person inside the costume acts. They just do so much to convey these emotions. And that's awesome. Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I will reiterate once again that they're more memorable for you because you're not looking at your children's backs. But the other thing that I will say is, I have mentioned this before, but I've seen a lot of amazing character interactions with children and adults with special needs. And I just think, again, these actors who do these jobs, they just do such an amazing job of making people feel important and valued. And I just really want to shout that out and give them all the respect for the work that they do. They probably don't get paid enough.
Totally agree, Joe. Well, why don't we close this out with our traditional Disney do or don't? What do you have for us?
All right. So quick Disney don't. Our kids have gone in and out of autograph phases a lot of the time, which is very cool. I will say, don't be that family that's not prepared to get the autographs. If you want autographs, and if you have a family of 6 kids and they all want autographs, that's totally cool. Each kid deserves to get their autographs from the characters if it's a character that gives the autograph. But don't leave all 6 autograph books in your bag and have it as a mess, especially because the cast members who are like ushering you in, they're reminding you to have everything out, have your pen out, have everything open to the page that you want it. Get all your stuff ready. It's going to take a long time, which again is totally cool. All your kids should get that autograph, but don't make it take longer than it has to take. Don't be that family that slows things down more than it needs to when you're getting autographs.
Totally agree. And one more tip, Joe. Are you a Sharpie family or like a ballpoint pen family?
Ballpoint pen. The Sharpies are just too valuable for the teachers and the family to risk losing at Walt Disney World, let me tell you.
Fair enough. And they do bleed through the autograph book pages sometimes. So if you're signing on both sides, I'm a ballpoint pen family too, usually.
Yeah, you can tuck it into a lot of these books on the top. All right, so that does it for meeting characters. Hopefully that will help you. I think for a lot of families, their first time at Disney World, they don't even realize that this is a thing. So hopefully that has helped you. If you have any comments, let us know. DisneyDeciphered@gmail.com, at WWDeciphered on Twitter, or on Instagram, Disney Deciphered. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode. And other than that, Leslie, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. And I will see you teaching my kids some stage direction, because they're obviously not listening to me.
Thanks, Joe.